Hello maltsters, welcome to the Bothy, welcome to a whisky review. In case you're wondering, I'm not wearing my usual bonnet at the moment because basically we're in between heavy showers, and if I wear this with the bigger skip, it kind of basically keeps the rain out my face. And it also kind of modernises me slightly. It's still impressive what you can occasionally buy on eBay for a reasonable price, and also get some reasonable quality with it. And here it is, one of my other bunnets. Anyway, here's one of my other single malts. This is review 1116, and it's really the concluding of a small series on new distilleries which produce single malt in Scotland. I've reviewed Lag, for example, and I've reviewed another one which I can no longer remember, but I did review it. And these are young distilleries which are still in the relatively early years of their life, but they're showing promise, and they're delivering competent whisky at a relatively young age, but, and it's a big but, we need to make sure we're not overpaying, because there are young distilleries that are thinking that, hey, we've got the interest of the malt invested, the Maltmates out there. We are a small distillery. We are new and exciting and authentic and original and totally passionate about what we do. So let's shove an extra 15 to 20 pounds in the top price. See if we can get a bit more cash in the stills. But although that will partially work, the flip side is that it becomes part of the conversation and drives people away from competent, good quality, young, small distilleries when the price is out of sync with the actual whisky that's in the bottle. And small distilleries do not have mature stock. They're not in a position that they can bottle something 7, 8 or 9 years old and actually put 15, 16 or 17-year-old barrel content into it to give it a nice big lift to make it much more palatable. That's not the case. Young distilleries, for 20 years, first 20 years of their life, they're struggling to find their feet and to make ends meet. And that's the reality of it. And they really have to be careful about disengaging with the customer. In other words, competent whisky that's either not quite ready yet, or usually it's competent enough, it is kind of ready, but the price is too high. I have to say, it's not a huge issue with Glenlivet. Glenlivet is a good example of a new generation young distillery, and it's about 10 years old now, so it's certainly starting to come of age. And I anticipate we're going to see some really good bottlings coming out of this distillery. Now, just before I go any further, I've just remembered the other young distillery that I'd forgotten about when I was giving you the narrative at the beginning of this video. And the fact is, I've suddenly realised I'm not naming it because I never got around to reviewing it, because I bought a bottle, I opened it, and frankly, I was too disappointed to want to review it. However, it's a young distillery, give them a chance, show a little bit of love and forgiveness. I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to mention Glenlivet though. It's not the first time I've reviewed this whisky. I had a sneaky suspicion talking to some Maltmates that in fact there's a seriously good single malt getting made at that distillery, and this bottling called the Drover is certainly confirming that. It has a very engaging, it has a wonderful signature. I've poured a glass, the smell is coming out to meet me, it's barley rich, it's beautifully sweet and sour, it's also dry fruit, a little bit of dry pineapple, a little mango, a little guava in there. It's got a little bit of banana going on. This is complex. So a little bit more about Glenlivet. Just while the whiskey's settling down and opening up, I reviewed this as the 2018-23 bottling back in September 2023 in review 994. That's when I did it. And I know that because I've written down as a wee nudge prompt, which I've hidden away under the lip of the barrel, because sometimes I do that. I gave it 81 points, which is a perfectly competent mark for such a young whisky. But now we're 3 years later. Are things improving? They certainly are. A little bit more about the bottle itself. Bottled at 46.5%, and it's 3,000 bottles. It's a limited edition, which is easy for a small distillery to say, because they're not actually producing that much in the first place. And if they're being smart and wise, which Glenlivet are at the moment, they're using their better casks that are ready earlier. And this shows itself in this bottling. I'm just going to give you a look. Where's that steampunker? Here we go. A little bit of tangible information here. It's stating in the back label non-chill filtered natural colour, which is very reassuring. In fact, I've actually poured a glass yesterday and left it in the fridge overnight so you can see the Scotch mist that's appeared in the glass. So I'm at the stage now, as you know, when distilleries say, oh, we're not chill filtering our whisky, I don't believe them until I prove it for myself. And I advise that you do the same. Unfortunately, it's common practice in the Scotch whisky industry to be economical with the truth. Not to blatantly lie, but not to offer full disclosure and real transparency. And they do so because they're running a business. It's normalised. It's institutionalised within the pattern of industrial operation. And frankly, it's something that I would advise the whisky industry to address more carefully, because there's too much meaningful, tangible conversation happening online, where statements are made by distilleries and through the industry representatives which come into question. And they may not be lies, but if there's withholding of full disclosure, there is a perception of disingenuous intent. And now is not the moment for distilleries to play games with their reputation. So, let's get back to this. There's more information in the back label. Important information. Excuse me. The bothy's quite damp, so it mists up my steampunker magnifying glass, which I absolutely need. 37% first fill Sauternes Barrique, 30% first fill Madeira Hogshead, 21% high strength first fill bourbon. High strength, okay, they mean young, right? And it's misting up again. 12% first fill Oloroso Hogshead. So there are 4 different and really quite different cask influences coming into this whisky. So what they're doing is they're constructing it. So the question is, how have they got on? This isn't a bourbon, it's not a sherry, it's not even a bourbon sherry combination. You've got the Madeira in there, you've got the, what else is it? Sauternes Barrique. Madeira and Sauternes. Those are very, very different wines. So, the first thing I notice is how beautifully assimilated all 4 casks are into this whisky. It is very clear to see that when the 4 casks have been brought together, the whisky has been rested for a period of time to allow the influence of the separate 4 casks to marry up together and to become one single malt experience. The nose is beautifully articulate. It's got a lovely fruity dry note to it. Certainly there's sour, certainly there's bitter, but it's certainly in the nose quite restrained. It's withheld. It's not being force-fed to you, as happens with some other personality malts. Not that there's any harm in it, we just need time to adjust it with our palates. First taste, unpeated, wonderfully fresh fruit and eau de cologne. Got that kind of lavender rosemary combination thing going on. Sage, absolutely. Cardamom, cumin. So there is this very articulate and highly expressive combination of both herbaceous input and spice input behind dry fruit, stone fruit, slightly unripe peaches, non-acidic, slightly unripe, the kind of bitter style of pineapple. We're getting it all here. We're going to add some water. Already a highly articulate and very intriguing single malt. When you add water, word of advice, not a full 5 millimeters. This is in fact relatively delicate. It won't take a lot of water. So, and this it comes purely from personal experience of engagement with whiskey. When I've added a full 5 millilitres from the soda spoon, it's kind of slightly over diluted and it's lost the articulate nature of the character of the malt. So I'm adding half that, which is just enough to be getting on with. So my advice, be easy in the water. What's there becomes more expressive, becomes more articulate. There's some banana, slight unripe banana creeping in. This isn't a big fresh fruit thingy. This isn't sort of a Glenmorangie experience, although Glenmorangie isn't that far away from Glenwivis. It's an absolute classic old school North Highland style of single malt. I'm going to give you the geographical bearings here, because if you've been doing your whiskey homework over the years, you know that it's good when you're drinking a whiskey to have a look at the location of the distillery on the map to give a general bearing as to what to expect from the personality. And you basically go up the A9 from Glasgow, through past Stirling, right up through Pitlochry to Inverness. It's a long, tedious journey because there's always roadworks happening there, and it's actually quite a boring road for most of the way, considering what a dramatic country Scotland is. But the A9 basically goes straight up through the heart of Scotland, and it takes you to Inverness, and when you go northwest of Inverness, you arrive at a small town of Dingwall. Now, you've not reached Brora yet, and the high highlands of Scotland, but you're just arriving at a town called Dingwall, and just across a few miles northwest, under the towering summit of Benwivis, you will find a small distillery which is unusual in that it's community owned. There are over 3,000 community funders in this distillery. It's closed to the public, it's not open for visitors. That's fine. It means they're not spending too much money on visitor centres which could otherwise be spent in good quality oak casks, which is always absolutely the number one priority for any distillery that wants to survive. These are good casks. Clear, crisp, they're not stale, they're not been lying about in backyards for a few months. We're not looking at an assembly of cobble casks from rejected staves lying in a big pile that's been brought over from the US because it's the cheapest way to do it. Now, I'm not trying to be sentimental here, I'm being pragmatic. It's our money we're spending. We need to be careful how we spend it, and therefore we need to know the integrity percentile ratio of the distillery. Interesting to note, something else worth mentioning, just as the water takes effect, is that they are bottling with integrity. It's self-evident. And they are heavily invested in alternative energy sources, including wind power, hydroelectric, which is wonderfully efficient hydroelectric, and there's plenty of it in the Highlands, biofuel and turbines, and they are generating as much of their own energy as they possibly can, which, considering that Scotland has the most absurdly outrageous and disproportionate energy costs in the whole world now, is a very successful strategy, and is going to save the distillery a fortune in grossly overpriced, highly manipulated traditional power resources. Electricity, the cost of electricity in the UK it's very telling. I'm going to leave it at that. It's also very telling that add a drop of water to this whiskey, just a small drop, not too much, the nose just opens up, it becomes creamier, richer, more barley sugar, and then we get to the taste. Just a drop. Beautifully grain phenolic without the peat. A little bit of chamomile in there. Soft notes of chamomile. Harder notes of resinous bay leaf. Right, I don't know if you've ever taken a bay leaf. It's usually put in with salmon when you're poaching a salmon. But bay leaf is quite a traditional herbal and sacred plant, used for thousands of years medicinally, and it has it's basically the northern hemisphere's eucalyptus. It has that kind of slight eucalyptus note, and we're noticing it in this whiskey. It's dry pineapple, dry banana. This is a bold whiskey. It's not trying to be sweet. It's not being engineered down like a big corporate multinational bottle filler project to try and appeal more and more and more to people who are no longer buying whiskey. This has been bottled for a whiskey drinker. It shows. At a relatively young age, and I put this average about 8 years old, this is impressive. There's real tangible signs of maturity. I've been following this distillery for a while, knowing that it's off the radar of the majority of whiskey reviewers online. But I want to let you know it's on my radar for a reason, because this is delicious, characterful stuff which I wouldn't recommend to a beginner, but I would absolutely recommend wholeheartedly to someone that's got a number of years of whiskey experience, whiskey sipping under their belt, and is looking for a distinctive character malt. It's not light, it's not fruity, it's much, much more than that. It's got a superb natural spirit-led complexity which is very appealing. Gingery, green ginger in there, and also a bit of pickled ginger. There's a slightly citrus umami note coming from the grain. Delicious stuff, beautifully balanced, very well made whiskey. Let's give it a mark. And my mark's creeping up now. My last mark in September 2023 was 81 out of 100. We can clearly see signs of progress with Glenlivet, so look out for it. And there you are, 84 out of 100. It would be lovely to pick up a bottle of Glenlivet from an independent bottler. But the reason that you don't see Glenlivet from the independent bottlers at the moment is because the price of a cask on trade from one whiskey producer to another whiskey producer is just too high. And it's just too high. Just so as you know. If you pop back for review number 1116 extras, for extra content, extra views, extra opinion, I shall be talking about slow motion and the importance of slow motion when it comes to whiskey. And it's something you don't get taught, because when you're at whiskey events, when we're at whiskey events, when we're at whiskey masterclasses, I remember them in the old days. I outgrew them. Didn't take long. Just sharing. Unfortunately, where there's time constraints, things happen too fast. So I want to discuss what happens when you slow things down significantly. See you there. Bye-bye.